Onions can be a great crop to grow that can produce a tasty yield that you can put into all kinds of different dishes, soups, stews, stir fries, sautés, and essentially almost all manner of recipes. However, they can be a bit tricky to grow. Over the years, I've always had tremendous issues with growing onions, largely because I would start them indoors, and then the growing season would kick into gear and I'd be planting and transplanting all these other crops, and the onions would just kind of lay forgotten, and then they'd get spindly, overgrown in their pots, and would never end up getting transplanted outside. However, last year in 2023, I did have success in being able to not just sprout onions in pots, but actually being able to transplant them. And so I want to share some notes on that process that I went through, because I feel that it would probably be helpful. These are notes that I wish I would have had access to before I started growing onions. So onions can also be tricky to grow in the sense that they require a lot of water and a lot of nutrients sometimes too, especially if soils are not rich in organic matter and nutrients. So it's always important to have a spot in the garden that will support the growth of onion. Maybe it's a spot that has had compost amended to it over time. Maybe it's been cover cropped a few times, and so that soil in that area has been able to build up, and so those nutrients in the soil would be a lot more accessible. And also with the boosted organic matter content, that would also increase the water holding capacity of that soil, making more water more accessible to plants such as onions over a longer period of time. So with those points in mind, on February 1st, 2023, I started planting onion seeds into pots. Basically what I did was I did one big flat of soil, and I just used a potting mix that was a couple of years old, and then I made some concentrated rows across the soil surface of where I would plant the seeds. Of course, then I planted them. I covered them with a little bit of soil, right? You definitely don't want to cover them too deep because the onions are fairly small seeds. And in this potting mix, it's not a big deal because it's pretty light, but other mixes or soils or soil-like substances may be a bit denser and heavier and harder, and make it harder for the onion seeds to push up from the ground. I grew two different varieties of onions. The one was Rosso di Milano, as indicated by the R on the one stick, and then the other one was Spanish Yellow, as indicated by the Y on the other stick. Then what I did after I gently misted that flat of soil, right, to wet the soil so that the seeds could begin to imbibe that water, was I put the whole flat inside my makeshift incubation chamber, which consists of a bin with a heat mat in it that's covered in a layer of sand. And I put the flat inside that, and I would check on it each day. The flat remained in the bin for about 3 to 4 days until the onion seeds began to germinate. And as soon as I got a pretty good number of them germinating, then I took them out and I put them underneath LED grow lights. And I made sure I kept them watered, and I tried to keep as much of an eye on it as I could, right? And the plants continued to sprout and continue to grow. And even though they did continue to get taller, I didn't really bother to cut the tops like some people will. When they're starting onions indoors, they will cut the tops off, right, to help kind of control the growth. But there's also some thought out there that cutting the tops might not be as advantageous as what has been initially thought. So I decided to just let them grow. I try to time my seeding so it's not too early to the point that the onions will be getting taller and leggy. I want to be able to plant them so that they can grow as naturally as possible, and then I will plant them outdoors. And speaking of planting outdoors, I planted them on April 23rd, 2023. Right, the onions are fairly cold hardy when they are growing, so they can tolerate some pretty cooler temperatures, much unlike some other vegetables that we commonly grow, such as tomatoes or cucumbers. So unfortunately, after I planted these onions on April 23rd, I wasn't really around to water them very much, and I think that's probably why I lost most of that crop, right? But fortunately, I did not plant all of the onions on April 23rd. I actually only planted half. So the other half I planted between June 9th and 10th. And during and after that time, I was there to water for, at least in the beginning, right? For the first 2 weeks, I was out there pretty much watering them every day. At least every day that it didn't rain. And the plants had much better survival rates.
Alright, so now that I've kind of weeded out this area, I'll get to these guys a little later. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and plant some of these onions, or transplant some of these onions. It's getting kind of late in the day. I don't want it to get dark, and these guys need to get in the ground. So what I'm taking is I'm taking one of these weeding tools. I'm just kind of going to make a bit of a divot. You could use a stick or something else. It's kind of challenging because the soil's so dry. I've been going through a drought. It just lightly rained about an hour ago, but it is absolutely nowhere near to the amount that we actually need. As you can tell with the soil, it's still like dusty and dry and just a little bit of surface moisture. So what we're going to do here is I am going to take some onions and go ahead and plant these guys out. So I'm going to do 1 onion per hole, of course. Roots are kind of developed. You know, it might be better to plant these guys in single cells and then plant those out, you know, biodegradable pots where you don't even have to disturb the root system. But I'm just gonna plant these guys and water them really good, deeply. See how they do. So the camera is kind of in the way here. Let me move that over here. Get this in here. So, all right, there we go. Onions should be fairly hardy as long as you keep at. Keep caring for them and stuff. I've never had success with planting onions before, so you know, this isn't really a how-to video. Hopefully it's not really hot tomorrow. These guys don't get fried. I'm gonna make sure to put compost on these guys soon, probably this weekend, and then probably try to start mulching them a little bit with grass clippings. But the soil is super dry, so these are definitely gonna get watered tonight.
Unfortunately, later in the season, as the summer progressed, I did slack off on the watering a little bit, although we did get some pretty good rain, so that wasn't too big of a deal. But I also never really did much to fertilize them or apply compost or anything like that, so the onions probably could have used that.
Alright, so what we're looking at here are the onions that I planted all the way back in, I believe it was May, mid-May or so. And you can see kind of they're starting to get some holes in them. Probably, is that the onion leaf miner or onion fly or something? I don't know. But, so this is way later than I'd prefer to be harvesting onions, right? That's usually mid to late August to early September, and it is currently, as I'm filming this anyway, it is like pretty well into November, almost mid-November. But I never fertilized them with compost or anything this year. I'm afraid it will probably seem like it. Is that vole? But let's see what they look like. So that's what we got. It's basically a glorified scallion at this point. But I'm also thinking maybe I could try to put some of these in the cold frame. I mean, it's already kind of infected probably with like onion fly or something, but might be able to try to weather them out in the cold frame. See if I can get seeds for next year. Might be an idea. Now let's dig up a few more, see what they look like. In reality, the onions should be like that, right? But whatever. Alright, so this is this year's onion harvest. I did put some in the cold frames, just to kind of see what they do, how they, or if they survive the winter, and if like there are options for getting seeds from them. And and then these I'll probably use to cook various things, add them to soups and things like that. But you know, I know like these are like tiny and small and everything, but this is actually the most successful onion harvest I've ever had, because I've in the past years, like I have tried to grow onions, and it's like I never even got them transplanted, you know, like I got them in pots and they sprouted, but I never like got around to putting them in the ground or anything like that, so I never got any harvest. So I'm happy to be able to get this and have some homegrown onions. Alright, so looking at this one cold frame, this is of course where I have the bald head mustard, which is these plants here, and then I have these onions here. Right, so this onion I actually transplanted from the onions that I was showing in the previous clip, and I put this in a cold frame. This has been slowly going to flower over the last few months. Of course, right now it's mid-February and we've got snow on the ground. So now it looks like these might not be in the best of health at this point in time, which is a fairly recent development, because before that, before it got cold again and we got all the snow, these were doing pretty well. Now it may come back from the bottom, from the base too, if those don't work out. But it would be pretty cool if I can get some seeds off of these. And I have onions as well in another cold frame as well. So we'll just kind of see how things develop as we move into springtime. I don't know if this cold spell, even though it is in the cold frame, it might inhibit the continued growth and production of these flower heads, but it may sprout up some new ones, or maybe these will recover and we'll be able to get some seeds. So remains to be seen.
So thank you so much for checking out this video on starting onions. Believe it or not, this is the most successful I've ever been at growing onions, and maybe in the future I will grow them again, but for now I think I will stick with growing scallions, since that seems to be what I got anyway. However, if the few onions that I did save in the cold frame over the winter, if they are able to continue to survive and produce seed, maybe I will try my hand at growing them again. At least now I know a lot more in regards to how to take care of them, right? So I can build off of what I know and what I learned, what I shared in this video, and maybe be even more successful next time. So thank you so much for checking out this video. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.